right. Does anyone want to ask me anything?
Your reaction to the negotiated plea deal?
So here's what I'll say. For the last several months, in court and in the media, Mr. Chesebro has been inaccurately described as the architect of some plan to overturn democracy, in the words of the district attorney. And I would just ask all the people watching to ask themselves this. If that were true, if Mr. Chesebro was the architect of a plan to overturn democracy, would the district attorney of Fulton County have offered him 5 years probation to terminate after 3 years and first offender status, which means that it doesn't even count as a conviction? And the answer is no. While Mr. Chesebro obviously stood up and accepted responsibility as part of a plea deal, I think this plea deal absolutely shows and proves that he was not and never was the architect of any sort of fake elector plan, anything like that. And so now the bottom line is, while Mr. Chesebro and others felt strongly about various things, look, he gets to go home to his family now, and he gets to get his life back and not spend 1 day in jail. He was facing very, very serious charges. The RICO statute, as y'all know, has a mandatory 5-year minimum as part of this deal. That was dropped. And another important aspect that I was telling folks about this deal that shouldn't be overlooked is the state agreed on the record that this is not a crime of moral turpitude. And I know some folks may not have understood the import of that, but let me explain. That is extremely important to Mr. Chesebro's prospects of continuing to practice law. And we believe that with the deal that we secured, it is likely that Mr. Chesebro not only will be able to go back to his family and not have to worry about the prospect of jail, but also be able to continue to practice law and just go back to life as normal before all of this happened.
Scott, can you talk about the time that Kenneth sat for a proffer agreement? He's handing over text messages. He's handing over more evidence. Should Donald Trump be worried today?
I don't think so.
Do you expect Mr. Chesebro to testify against the former president?
Here's how I'll answer that. The plea agreement says that if he's called, he'll testify, and he's a man of his word. If he's called, he'll testify. That doesn't mean that they're going to call him, and I don't think that's anywhere near certainty. And in fact, quite frankly, I would be somewhat surprised if they did call him.
Scott, can you comment on the timing of all of this? We got through jury questionnaire this morning. Why did it take until after that to get a plea deal?
He was doing a proffer with the district attorney's office as required.
So why then were we going forward with the questionnaire?
Just because you never know, right? At the very end, sometimes things happen. And so I think the judge didn't want to let the jury sit around or release them and then have to say, come back. They would be even less happy than they were sitting in that room. So I think it was just a belt and suspenders approach.
You said that he was not an architect of anything that happened. And originally you said that he had simply just written a legal opinion. Is it fair to say that there are other potential architects in this, that he may testify against people who are actually doing something involving the false electors, whether it's Rudy Giuliani or John Eastman?
Not that I'm aware of.
What kind of value do you think his testimony could have, if at all?
It's totally up to the district attorney whether they want to call him. And again, if they call him, he will fulfill his obligations. But I would be personally, just speaking as a individual, not officially, I would be surprised if they did.
The RICO cases generally involve the mob, gangsters, people like that. You know, if this was that sort of case, people might be calling Mr. Chesebro a snitch. What do you say to that?
He didn't snitch against anyone. He went in there. He accepted responsibility for what I would view as one of the minor kind of tag-on charges in the indictment. And that was that. I mean, I could absolutely tell you that, again, if he's called, he'll go testify and answer their questions. But I would disagree. I don't think Mr. Chesebro snitched against anyone. I think he simply decided it was time for him to put this behind him and go on with his life. And look, here's the thing. You could feel strongly about things, and then you're offered something that's just too good to turn down. And with any human, with the prospect of saying, my destiny is in the hands of 12 strangers, and this is no disrespect to the potential jurors. Jury service is a wonderful thing. But the prospects of having your destiny decided by 12 strangers is a really, really daunting thought. And what this does for Mr. Chesebro is it guarantees he goes home, he doesn't spend a minute in jail, he can hopefully continue to practice law, and he can be with his family.
Scott, there were deals in the past, but what was intriguing enough about this one to actually accept it?
I'm sorry, what was that?
What was intriguing enough about this particular plea offer to go ahead and accept it?
I think it was the fact that there was a agreement on the record that it wasn't a crime of moral turpitude. There was an agreement it would be first offender, which in the state of Georgia is very big because, as the judge stated on the record, it is sealed, and once he is done with his 3 years probation, because it'll be automatically terminated after 3 years, it'll be as though this never happened. And so, to be clear, I want to make very clear, Mr. Chesebro was not convicted. There is no conviction as a matter of law. The First Offender Act specifically says that it is sealed, adjudication is postponed, and then once you successfully complete your term of probation, which here will be 3 years because it automatically terminates after 3 years, the case will go away as though it never happened. So it will not be considered a conviction.
Have you been negotiating this before the Sidney Powell deal, or did that guilty plea affect y'all's decision to seek a negotiation?
I wouldn't say it affected it. It was definitely kind of a last minute thing, as often these plea deals are, but I don't think it was Ms. Powell's deal that affected it. I think just the reality is, as trial gets closer, the parties kind of try to get closer and see if they can avoid it. And this was going to be a 5-month trial, so let's be honest, I think the lawyers on both sides, had an incentive to try to work together.
What did he write in his apology letter to the state?
Actually, I don't know. I didn't. He wrote it right there at the table, and my co-counsel was dealing with that. I don't know. It will be part of the record, so I'll be interested to find out too.
Why did he have to plead guilty to a felony when the others had misdemeanors?
I think that would be a good question for the district attorney. I really don't know.
And how would you describe your negotiations with the DA's office? How do you think they've handled all of this, and do you feel like they treated your client fairly?
I think they were cordial, and that's what I'll say. I really, I've made my viewpoints on the merits of the charges, so they were cordial. We all shook hands. No one has any ill will, but I don't think I could sit here and just go on and on about how we worked well together or anything like that. It's not that we didn't work well together, but I mean, this all happened so fast.
How does this affect any potential exposure your client has in the Jack Smith case?
So the Department of Justice has a policy that says ordinarily, with certain limited exceptions, my understanding, is that ordinarily when someone is found guilty or pleads guilty to on the state level of some sort of crime, it is the policy of the DOJ not to bring charges unless there are very, very specific circumstances. So interestingly, what you see sometimes is someone's acquitted on the state level, then they can be charged federally. The law is clear they can be. When you're convicted or you plead guilty, what's supposed to happen is that's it. And so I really hope Jack Smith will seriously take those obligations seriously. They're in the Department of Justice manual. It's called the Justice Manual. And I think this should be the end of this nightmare for Mr. Chesebro.
Did that figure?
Discussions with Jack Smith's
No.
office or Jack Smith himself?
No.
Did that policy figure into Mr. Chesebro's thinking about?
I don't want to get into that. It's kind of a little too deliberative in terms of what we talked about, because that is privilege. But that's something, as a former federal prosecutor, I've had to deal with, and I know it exists, and so I hope it's taken seriously in this case.
How disappointed are you, given that you had previously said that anything short of all charges dropped, you don't want to take?
Every lawyer says that, okay? And I'm not trying to say that to make lawyers sound bad. I swear we're not that bad. But that's what lawyers say until there's a deal too good to pass up, and then you say the opposite, you know? So look, I'm not disappointed at all. I'm thrilled, because one thing to make absolutely clear about, this is not about the lawyers. Yeah, we're there making the arguments. This is about the clients. This was about Mr. Chesebro. Mr. Chesebro got a deal where he will not have to spend a day in jail, and he will be able to go on with his life. So I will have plenty of places to move on to. Mr. Chesebro is going to be able to go back to his life. I also want to just take the personal opportunity to thank my colleague Serene McKee and Manny Aurora, who's not here, and Robert Wilson. We're all a team. So thank you. Any last questions?
How is Chesebro doing right now?
I think he's doing good. I think it's a relief that it is over and that he can now go back to his life. All right. Well, thank you all. I really do appreciate all of you. I've had a couple of matters that have had some cameras, nothing like this. And I really enjoy talking with all of you, so please keep in touch.
See you on CNN as a contributor.
Absolutely. Absolutely.